All right. What are upper neighbors? We're going to take a little bit of a deeper look into upper neighbors. I just shot a bunch of short videos, maybe 4 or 5 anyway, on the topic of upper neighbors, and I've had an interesting response from that. There was a time when I was studying classical harmony, and a lot of these ideas come from classical harmony. An upper neighbor is a diatonic note that is above a chord tone. So if we take a G, for instance, let's take a look at the G major scale, right, as our material for this, and the G major chord, but we're going to split that up into triads. Okay, so each one of those is a different inversion of a triad. Okay. Now, maybe we should look at an arpeggio at the same time. Here is 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, and 1. All right, so now we've got a major scale and the triads that are breaking down a bar chord of G, and a little arpeggio 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. Okay, upper neighbors. An upper neighbor is a neighboring note that's diatonic, meaning out of the scale, a neighboring note to a chord tone. So in the case of the G, right, we have the A falling to the G, the E falling to the D, the C falling to the B, the G again, A falling to the G, the E falling to the D of the chord, and the A falling to the G, one at a time. Okay, one note at a time. Now let's do 2 notes at a time with just one melodic note. The melodic note is taking place on top. Okay, now let's put the melodic note on the bottom, of a double stop. And then maybe down here. Okay, you get the idea. Now, if we start to, we can do 2 at a time. You hear what's happening here. The tension wants to resolve back to the chord tone, right? If we hold on to the tension of the chord of the upper neighbor, because it won't be behaving as an upper neighbor. An upper neighbor needs to fall. And if it's not falling, it's no longer an upper neighbor, it just becomes a color tone. So if I take a G chord and I just plant an upper neighbor there and don't move it, it's no longer an upper neighbor. We now call it a chord tone, right? Because it's a color in the chord. In this case, we're adding a 9. In this case, we're adding a 6. Right? In this case, we're adding a sus4. That just wants to be resolved too much. So chord tones are different than upper neighbors. We can use an upper neighbor to introduce us to a chord tension, but they don't behave as a chord tension. Chord tensions are a different thing. Okay, now we can do the same thing with triads. doing in this case is embellishing the chord, in this case the chord of G, right? There's just, so many different ways to use this, and I'm just using one chord right now, right? Just one voicing. I can, if I used a different voicing, if I move to C, for instance, so you can do the whole thing with the, the same idea with any larger chord form. Now, but one final thing. When I say larger chord form, I mean this is all about breaking down these larger chord forms to inform these smaller chord forms, which you can start to manipulate with ideas like upper neighbors. Right, and it's up to you to find the licks. I'm just giving you the information. The upper neighbor is incredibly powerful, and it's not a guitaristic kind of thing. It's a compositional kind of thing that applies just as much to a piano player or a saxophone player, an oboe player, or you, the guitar player. Okay, and this is this is another thing that I think sort of cool. I remember years ago I had a bit of an epiphany. Well, if this is an upper neighbor tone, and these are double stops, then we can take triads. And if we take 3 notes at a time, what do we end up with? We end up with the neighboring chord, right? And the neighboring chord in this case is the chord in the key. It's the 2 chord, it's the A minor. G to A minor. G to A minor. G to A minor. And there's some really cool implications there. When you think of one chord, like one G chord, now all of us, I've got more going on there. I have G. Right, there are a lot of really lovely little comping ideas that you can use there with the idea of the tension is against the one chord, and that neighboring chord, right, becomes a tension against the one chord. It's almost like you're not changing the chord. You're just adding a harmonic interest to in this case, the one chord or the G chord. So break down every chord, that every big bulky chord form. Break them down into these single notes, to double notes, and to triads, and so on, right? And I think that will greatly inform not only your chordal thinking, but also your melodic thinking, your ability to play over simple changes, and also connect the whole fretboard. I mean, if you're doing G and G and G and G, and then use these concepts in every one of those positions, right? There's my three note arpeggio triads and breaking down those triads like so. You get the idea. Lots of work there. Um, the, the way I would approach it, honestly, I mean, if you're a practicing person, like a practicing musician, I would take your practice time and dedicate anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes daily to this concept in all positions of the fretboard. And it will have huge implications in terms of your understanding and in terms of your being able to hear these ideas, chord tones, and upper neighbors.